perspective, we can say there's this much free will and there's this much, control. If we get to a really, really high end of the spectrum, we can say that there's no such thing as free will, there's no such thing as control. It's all one perfectly happening exactly the way that we/God decided. Mm-hmm. So where do we say that there's free will and that there's not free will? Mm-hmm. When we have a test at school, whether we pass that test or not, that's free will, whether we pass the test or not. But it's also conditioned by how smart we are, how good our memory is, and how good we understand the information. And we can study and get better to be able to get a better grade and pass the test. But bottom line is we have free will to how well we do on that test. But yet, at the same time, we're made so smart. We're made to understand certain information so good. So our karma, what we do to study, how smart we are, impacts how well we're going to do on the test. But we also have our karma that we can do to change somewhat how that result's going to be. So does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So in the same way, there's a certain situation that's happening here. If nothing, it's like if you don't study for a test, what's the situation going to be for that test? And you can tell, I rarely studied when I was in college, Sometimes I'd read my notes an hour or two before class. That's all I'd do for studying generally. I did just fine. Other people need to study for hours, weekends, to be able to pass the test. So in this way, it's all going to be a little different for everybody, depending on the situation. On another situation, one of my housemates teaches me Odissi dance. I mean, in order for me to do that correctly, I need to practice for hours and hours and hours. Otherwise, it's just like, it's just my legs doing this while my arms are doing this. It doesn't work, So we all have certain areas that we're good and more coordinated or in this way. So with this, we see where people have better karma, better abilities. We see where they have weaker abilities. We see where they need to study in life, or where they need to do some remedial measure, or where they need to work to do something to...
Can I tell you what Nandi said to figure out karma?
Yeah,
Remedies?
Sure.
He said it doesn't exactly get rid of the karma so much, but it helps it to mollify some negative effects of the karma, but it gives you also the strength to face the karma.
Mm-hmm. Middle of both.
Okay, so...
The big thing is that the remedial measure has to be as powerful as the original karma that created the situation. For example, in Prashnamarga it says plagiarism will make you dumb. Yet the remedy is worship Saraswati. Okay, so let's say, there's some poor guy in India. He wrote an incredible book on Jyotish. And, somebody went, they said, oh, nice book, I'll buy it off you for $5. They went, they took it, they printed it and made $1 million and put their name on it. And they sold it and they got fame while this guy starved to death and died. He made nothing, from this. If that person does a little worship of Saraswati, it's not going to balance out the karma. Where now, let's say there was a little line that the person didn't quote, and, for something. Maybe a little worship of Saraswati will be able to balance that out. If it was something bigger, you got to do more than just worship Saraswati. What does, you see, and I was talking about this with Remedies earlier.
Put all of our references in the...
Yeah. You want to be smarter, you want to reference everything. Reference everything, pay credit to every author, pay credit to everybody, and then Saraswati blesses you.
So look at the karmas that the Chinese are doing. They're plagiarizing everything.
Oh, they're copying everything.
They're copying and plagiarizing all of our computer software, all of our CDs, movies, everything.
It creates, it'll karmically create ignorance in their country eventually. So, and if you look at it just from one standpoint, if they're copying it, then they don't have the people who are smart enough to be making it in the first place.
Right.
So they're creating ignorance.
It's
a short-term benefit, and a long-term loss for them. Once we encrypt things where they can't, then what are they going to do? That now the programs will get so advanced that they won't be able to even make the beginner ones, and so it never pays plagiarism. Yeah, Saraswati will never bless those who And but now when we look at that, it says worship Saraswati. We're going into remedies now. So what does worship Saraswati really mean now?
Gain knowledge of our true self.
That's getting on the spiritual level. What does worshiping Saraswati mean? Does it mean just paying for a big puja for her?
Doesn't it mean you want to get to that part of the mother that will stimulate your intellect? Well,
you're aligning yourself with that cosmological force that you recognize.
How does that balance out the karma of plagiarizing that guy's whole book and letting him starve to death?
Well, because if you felt
okay.
you weren't smart enough to come up with your own idea, you had to go take somebody else's.
Okay.
It's like ignorance of your own innate intelligence. That.
Okay.
I don't know.
What does Saraswati represent?
Knowledge, learning.
Knowledge, speech, and learning. Where is knowledge, speech, and learning happening?
Here.
School.
Schools. Students.
That's a gift to school.
So one way to worship Saraswati is giving donations to schools, paying for kids. And I pay for a little girl in India, in Varanasi. She's a boat cast little girl, 8 years old. I pay for her to go to English school, so she goes to school with the rich kids and learns English. Boat cast. Her family is from the boat people.
Oh, I see. Okay.
She wouldn't get an education at all, and it was pretty, no chance of getting any Saraswati. I pay for her to go to school.
There's the Saraswati.
She's in a place where Saraswati is so strong. That person is getting something that she couldn't get any other way. So this is a way to worship Saraswati as well.
Is that a remedy for say a problem with the house?
I'm just trying to explain, when the scripture says worship Saraswati. If the person is somebody who can't worship Saraswati, and if the curse is too bad that a little puja of Saraswati is not going to do anything, then where do we go? We can still use the same verse. Saraswati represents learning, teaching, knowledge, students. And so the remedy has to go, that guy starved to death because you stole his book. So now you got to go and, give, 60% of your earnings to some school where poor kids are learning nothing because there's no money to have books. I've been in schools in India where there is no money to have books. They don't have any books.
They just got some guy telling them.
Some guy on a chalkboard, and he has 3 or 4 books from the 1960s. He's like, look, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And all the teachers, they go to sleep on the floor in the school at nighttime, and they wake up, and this was when I was studying Ayurveda. I was out in the jungle picking herbs, and we went. This is one school where and but so in that case, supporting a whole school like that so that they have books and materials to be learning. What a Saraswati puja that is. In the same way, when it says worship Lakshmi, worship the sun, worship. In this way, we have to take these little things the scriptures give us, and we have to apply them practically. But let's get back to Arudas. Okay, so we talked about the dual rulership, the meaning of each Arudapada. Are you still with us, Visti?
Yeah, man.
There.
He's still awake.
What time is it there, huh?
We're just talking about karma here. If you're going to ask me something specific like Jyotish, I'll say second house, Saraswati yoga.
Okay. Meaning of each Aruda, that's where we're going.
When do we get a Saraswati yoga?
Huh?
When is the Saraswati, you mentioned Saraswati yoga, when does that happen?
I've noticed 3 different Saraswati yogas mentioned in the scriptures. But we won't. That yogas is our next section today.
But I didn't include Saraswati yoga.
We'll still talk about that.
Okay.
You know, somebody has Saraswati yoga when they have dreams that are just like very vivid. Saraswati's coming to them, teaching them. There's even a story Kamala Sutton gives about this woman she saw with Saraswati yoga in her chart, and the woman was a Catholic woman, yet she told about this woman that came to her in a dream carrying a water pot, and she taught her how to do puja. And this Catholic woman was doing this puja to Saraswati every night. That Saraswati had taught her in her dreams. Had no clue who Saraswati was. So, but this is indication of Saraswati yoga. The dream life will be very vivid. Okay.